have the honor of hearing from the current British High Commissioner, His Excellency Charles Moore. I think you've been serving us since January 2021. Thank you for that. Serving Britain, but we're benefiting as well. He's going to speak to us a little bit about what it's like to be a visitor to Namibia. Since we're all proudly Namibian, it's good to hear from someone who visits Namibia. So thank you very much for availing time, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Is this is working now? Do I have slides? I don't know. I put some pictures up there, but we'll see if they come up. Good afternoon. Lovely to be here. Two apologies, first of all. First of all, I apologize that I'm overdressed. This isn't my tourist outfit. I don't go around the country like this unless I'm on official business. Secondly, I was meant to be speaking this morning, and I caused inconvenience with the organisation because we had a function at State House to attend with the Finnish president on his state visit, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to fulfil my obligation earlier. Anyway, it's lovely to be here. This is actually my second visit to Namibia EXPO, and I was really impressed last year by seeing the expo and talking to so many people, and especially Albie inviting me to talk more about tourism in Namibia. You know, I've been a diplomat for, 40 years, and this is my 9th posting. It's my 5th posting in Africa. I've also served in Zimbabwe, in Botswana, in Ghana, in South Sudan, in Africa. And you know, being a professional diplomat also makes you a professional tourist, I guess, because you're in a country for a limited time. I'm in Namibia for 4 years, and we normally move every 3 to 4 years. And during that time, you know, it's my job really to get under the skin of the country, to get to know a country, to get to know the culture, to get to know the people, and to therefore to do a lot of tourism, which is a pleasure. And so in a way, I probably get to know countries better than the people who live in those countries. I mean, for example, many of you have been to the UK. I've never been to Liverpool. So, you know, you never know your own country as well as other countries, because you always think, I'll do it next year, I'll do it when the kids grow up or whatever. And before you know it, you haven't been to Sossusvlei. You must correct that. So I mean, just to put it into context from where I am, I arrived in January 2021. And obviously 2021 was COVID year, so it was had such a massive impact on the tourism industry. Pros and cons. I mean, obviously it decimated the economy of the tourism industry. As a tourist, though, I found it actually really nice because there was nobody else around. The roads were completely empty. A lot of the lodges were closed, but I mean, one time I went to Waterberg and it cost me $160 to stay in Waterberg for a night, self-catering. So, you know, there were far cheaper rates around because, quite rightly, people were trying to get the business, even though there were not many people in the country. Since I've been here in those 2 years, I mean, I've done 50,000 kilometers around the country. I've been to Etosha more than a dozen times. That's my probably weekend escape. Swakop and Walvish at least 10 times. Sossusvlei a few times. Waterberg, Popa Falls, Omaruru, Mount Echo, Spitzkop, Cape Colony, Sandwich Harbour, Fish River, Quiver Tree Forest, Hoba Meteorite, and then Harnas, Hardap, Von Bach, Durstenbroek, Harivo, Nankuse. So, you know, I'm trying to do as much as I possibly can to get to know the country, and it's a beautiful country. It's an absolute privilege to be able to drive around and to see so much in Namibia. And I do this mainly as a solo traveller. My family are in the UK, so I'm very happy just to get in the car, drive for 6 hours, crank up the rock music, and take a bottle of red wine and a fillet steak and self-cater somewhere. I haven't yet got into camping. I mean, that's a very Namibian thing, but I haven't really done much of the camping side. I tend to need a bed and a bathroom and a fridge, and then I'm happy as Larry. But I still want good service, and I still want to be welcomed wherever I go by people who are professional hospitality providers. You know, I go to Etosha for the wildlife. I don't go to Etosha for the accommodation. I go to Sossusvlei for the solitude of sitting on a sand dune at 6:30 in the morning. I'll go to Swakop for the seafood. I'll go to Sandwich Harbour for the views. I'll go everywhere for photography. So I take a lot of photographs of scenery, animals, wildlife, whatever. And generally, I prefer to stay inside parks where possible. You know, inside Sossusvlei, inside Etosha, I find is better for me because that's what I'm there to do. So that's me as a tourist in Namibia. And I mean, over the past 2 years since I've been here, you know, I can honestly say that I've not had a bad experience or anything close to a bad experience. There's been a couple of places where I've thought, nah, I can't be bothered to go back there again. It's just not what I wanted or not what I was looking for. But the majority of places I would be very happy to go back to again and again. And so I'm going to talk about a little. That's about me and my tourism here. I'm trying to sort of generalize a little bit about Brits, British tourists, what they can expect when they come to Namibia, because I see quite a few of them as well. And let me tell you, before I came to Namibia as High Commissioner, I would tell people that I'm coming to Namibia, and I would have literally only 2 responses. One is, that's my favorite country in the world, and the other one is, where the hell's that? And so part of my job here is to reduce the number of where the hell that's when I speak to people from the UK. And that's working, I think, you know, and Namibia is itself doing a lot more over the past couple of years to promote itself. It's much more visible on the world stage. You've got some hugely exciting plans around oil and around green hydrogen, which is giving real visibility to Namibia, stepping out from South African shadows. People are coming here. Before COVID, we had something approaching 30,000 UK visitors a year, which is pretty good. I think we're about the 3rd highest number nationality of tourists. But that's still not enough, and I think obviously recovering from the pandemic is going to be important. So about Brits, you know, Brits basically want sun because we don't have sun in the UK. We just have clouds and rain. And so sun is obviously important to us. Namibia is not an obvious choice. It's never an obvious choice for the UK. Sometimes it's seen as a sort of specialist holiday. It's seen as a sort of niche holiday. Africa isn't promoted as a destination in the UK as much as Europe or Asia or the US, places that are far better known. It's more expensive. It may not be that expensive when you're here, but it's expensive for Brits to get here. And if you're organising a tour, it can be expensive, especially for a family of 4. And let's remember, in a way, that the tourism market in the UK can be quite local. So for the cost of a flight to Namibia, you could probably get a week all-inclusive in Marbella or Costa del Sol. And it can be, you know, much cheaper to go just that little bit more local. Namibia is obviously off the beaten tourist track. And I think people are a bit concerned about most of them. When you talk about where you're going on holiday, their first answer is very rarely Africa. They don't think of Africa as necessarily a holiday destination. And the other big issue, I think, for us is that Namibian winter is the British summer. So our big school holiday is July to September. And that's obviously the time when all the Brits go overseas and go on holiday and look for some sun. And unfortunately, although you get plenty of sun here, it's not particularly warm. So seasons are the other way around. Against that, a lot of our schools have 2-week breaks in October. And that's when the weather here is fabulous. So coming out for 2 weeks in October is growing in popularity. Brits tend to want value for money, especially for families. And even cheap Namibia can be expensive as a package for somebody coming out from the UK, especially with kids. You know, because if you're bringing kids here, you want to see the wildlife, you want to see the scenery. But organising that with flights, with lodges, with transport, you know, it can all stack up. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, because what you get then is a different class of British tourist. You know, there are people who will never go anywhere apart from Spain. They love it. It's cheap. There's sun. So, you know, a lot of people are just not bothered about going anywhere further. Then you get people who like going to Asia. And again, because it's relatively cheap and there's plenty of sun. And now we've got to try and attract people to Africa, which I think is actually getting a bit easier because people suddenly realize that there's much more to do, especially in a place like Namibia. There's a lot more to do here than they think. Every time I speak to business people in the UK, and I say to them, well, look, come out here, do your business, and then tag on a few days. Don't tell the boss, just tag on a few days. Say you can't get a flight back, and then do 3 or 4 days tourism. And it's surprising how many people do that, and they love it. You know, I've had feedback from visitors, from friends and colleagues and businessmen who do that. They tag on something at the end. And generally, they're hugely pleasantly surprised. Most of the comments are like, oh, I didn't expect it to be that beautiful. I didn't expect the journeys to be so long. But driving is a pleasure. Everybody is really friendly and helpful. They feel safe, they feel comfortable. They're stunned by the beauty of the country. And winter is bloody cold. So they don't enjoy it. I think we had one of my colleagues who's the ambassador in Zimbabwe came camping with the kids in August last year, and she said never again camping, not in August in Sesriem. So, I mean, what can visitors expect when they come to Namibia? And, you know, I guess for me, I like to be treated in the way that I would treat other people, you know, if they're, I mean, about hospitality. In fact, my daughter and her husband are both in the hospitality industry. And, I mean, some would say, hospitality, what's the meaning of hospitality? It's about making people feel as though they were at home, even when you really wish they were. So you've got to make them feel welcome. You've got to make them feel as if they're special. And I found that in Namibia. I mean, I think the people who work in the hospitality industry are delightful. What can you expect on arrival? Well, you can expect a smooth arrival process at the airport. And in fact, I was really surprised. I came back on Saturday from the UK, and I think this is the first time in 2 years, I think they've changed the trolleys, because for 2 years they had those trolleys with square wheels. Yeah? And there was not a single trolley in Hosea Kitake Airport which had round wheels. And I'm really pleased they've invested in some round wheel trolleys. And that's a really important first impression for a visitor as well. You get a warm welcome from courteous staff. I mean, the immigration, I've never found anything other than very welcoming. You bounce through Windhoek at the start and the end of the visit. I'll come back to that later. You enjoy a high level of personal safety and security. You're not worried about safety and security. And you know, when I first arrived in January 21, I think it took me about 27 hours to settle in and feel at home. And that was because, you know, I could walk down the street and there was nothing that made me feel like a foreigner. And in Windhoek, you know, the society is such that when you're walking down the street, nobody can tell whether you arrived yesterday or whether you lived here all your life. But actually that's a lovely thing, because in so many parts of Africa particularly, you get off the plane, you're a foreigner, you're a tourist. Here you're made to feel welcome, and it doesn't matter whether you've been here all your life or whether you arrived yesterday. But that's actually I found a really special thing. So I found myself feeling very much at home very quickly. There's a great level of cleanliness and hygiene. I mean, even in the more basic establishments that I've stayed in, I know there's a lot of effort put into making them at least clean and presentable, even if they're a little bit run down or whatever. And that's understandable, perhaps, because of the economic crisis arising from the pandemic, where lodges have had to rein in on the spending. There's obviously stunning scenery, excellent roads, the tar and gravel roads, generally have been in really, really good condition. And the roads here in Namibia are apparently proven to be better than Italy or Belgium, which is impressive. And I love the driving experience. I mean, you know, driving in the UK or in Europe can be really stressful because you've got a roundabout every 200 meters, or traffic lights, or traffic. I mean, here, when I was my first trip up to Katima Mulilo, I turned right at Grootfontein, and my sat-nav said to me, after 743 kilometers, you will have reached your destination. You never hear that in Europe. But that's about the distance from London to Edinburgh. So it's great to have that sort of sat-nav information. There's too much to choose from. And people say to me, well, I didn't realize there was actually that much to do, that much to see. And of course, because you've got to travel in 3, 4, 5 hours in different directions, you can't necessarily see it all. So there's the standard loop that everybody goes on, down to Sossusvlei, over to Walvis, up to Swakop, to Etosha, Waterberg, and back to Windhoek, because it's quite a nice loop. But actually, you know, you need a lot of time here to do Namibia justice. And there's always something else to explore, and I'm still finding new places that I want to go to. So I'm off to Ipupa Falls at the end of May, so doing Kunene region, and I'm so looking forward to that as a very different experience. I think costs are reasonable, and you know, there are still a number of places that I think are arguably overpriced, and is that value for money? I don't know. But I don't tend to stay in those more expensive lodges because I don't often look for that sort of break. I'm very happy to rough it just above camping. Disappointments, and I've got to, you know, you've got to be a bit critical, I think. Windhoek. Honestly, Windhoek's a boring place. I have to say, you know, Saturday morning, I can just be sitting there thinking, what am I going to do this weekend? It's hard to find out what's going on. The tourism offices are closed. The museums are run down, and most of them are closed. The botanical gardens, I have to say, are shocking. I haven't seen a plant in there that's actually got colour on it. The botanical gardens should be a real magnet for tourists, and it should be a pride of a capital city. And if you look at places like Singapore, if you look at Kew Gardens in the UK, it's exceptional, and you understand the flora of the country. You don't get anything, I'm afraid, from botanical gardens here. I mean, it's closed at weekends, but it looks like it's been closed since about 1960. And so I think, but actually, you know, I can see that Windhoek hasn't put a lot of effort into the tourism side, because a lot of people do bounce through Windhoek. There's so much to do in this country, there's so long distances to drive or to fly, that actually you don't have much time to spend in Windhoek, and actually 24 hours at either end of your visit is probably all you need to do, because then you're spending time in Sossusvlei and Etosha and other places. But actually, I would like Windhoek to see. I'd like to see more in Windhoek because it's got a lot to offer. It's a beautiful town. You've got clean streets. You've got great restaurants. You do have good museums. So there's a lot of potential, and I think it would be great to see more Windhoek tourism, which encourages people to stay here for 2 or 3 days during their time, rather than simply bouncing out. And most of the people I know who have visited Namibia said, well, we didn't really stop in Windhoek, we just drove through, and they loved the country, but they don't really understand Windhoek, and I think that's just a bit of a missed opportunity. So, I mean, I am a real fan of tourism, not just in Namibia and Windhoek as well. There is so much to do. It's a complete privilege to live here and be able to do that. I know it's much more expensive and inaccessible if you're flying in from Europe. But everybody I have met from UK who has been here as a visitor, whether it's a business visitor or on tourism trips, say they're going to come back. And there isn't any better statement than that. for people to make. You know, when you go to a country, and we've all been to countries or cities or places where you think, never again. What do they say? A once-in-a-lifetime holiday, and then some holidays you go, well, that's the once that I'm going to do it in my lifetime. But actually, Namibia is a place which people come for the first time, they fall in love with, they see the potential. There's so much more that they want to do, and they come back to do it. So thank you for what you do. I mean, in the hospitality industry, it's not easy. There's a lot of competition. There's a lot of competition of places, of lodges, of types of lodges, types of accommodation. There may be a skills shortage, but you know, Namibians are naturally warm people. They're naturally lovely people to engage with. They're always polite, and that's actually something that it feels very special to us as tourists. So I think Namibia is doing a great job, and you know, I'm delighted that I'll be here for 2 more years to do another 50,000 kilometers around the country and get to see as many places as possible. But thank you for what you do, because you know, I think part of my role, well, most of my role is obviously representing the UK and Namibia, but part of my role as well is to represent Namibia in the UK and to promote Namibia, not just on a business, not just from a business sense, but also from a tourist sense. And you find that if people come here to visit on tourism, they may then want to come and do some business as well. Because they find that it's actually an easy place to live, and we don't have load shedding, and it's easy to get around, and all of those sort of issues. So there's a real benefit to people visiting Namibia. I think that's about all I want to say. But actually, I have been in touch, just to let you know, I have been in touch with British Airways and Virgin, said, look, you know, British Airways, you do 26 flights a week to South Africa. Maybe one of those you could just stop in Windhoek on the way down to Cape Town or something. You actually fly over it. So the conversation has started. It's not going to happen anytime soon because it does have quite a big logistical impact, and they have to carry 2 more crews or whatever, and it costs quite a lot of money. However, you know, I've sown the seed, because if you had 1 flight a week that stops in Windhoek on the way to Cape Town, first of all, you get a full flight coming to Namibia. You'll fill the flight going to Cape Town from here. Same on the way back. To me, it's a complete no-brainer. So having that direct link, which we used to have probably, a decade ago, we used to have a direct flight between London Gatwick and Namibia. That would be a dream of mine. And that would be, because that's another obstacle for British tourists, because they have to fly different routes rather than being able to come here directly. So we're working on that, but that would be a long-term objective of mine. But no, thank you for what you do. Thank you for having me in your country. Thank you for giving me the warm welcome wherever I go. Not because I'm a British High Commissioner, but because I'm a tourist. And most people don't know what I do, apart from where's that number plate from? But you know, even without knowing that, I always get a warm welcome and love this country to bits. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Please come and sit with me, because part of your presentation, yes, includes the beautiful photos.
Oh, yeah.
So don't worry. I got it. Thank you so much. That was. If I was a proud Namibian before, hearing it from you, it means a lot. So thank you very much. So in addition to him being a career diplomat, he's also a part-time photographer. And he's going to show some really amazing photos. I saw them, just loading them up. Or in the meantime, do you want to take a question from the audience, or?
Yeah, however you want to play.
Because it's like...
Oh, he's got here quick, isn't he? He almost had his hand up before the end of the question.
Okay,
okay.
Yes. And then just before that, I also have to do a housekeeping announcement. For the cameraman, when you're asking your question, please just stand up so they can catch you in the frame. Your beautiful, handsome faces. So just raise whenever you're asking a question. And before that, let's go ahead. Look at these.
I should say that I think we're invited to submit 5 slides, and I think you allowed me 12, but the other 743 of my favourite photos you weren't allowed to show, so I mean, it would take a while. But yeah.
Wow, look at that one. Look at that.
Does anybody know where that is?
Hobabis.
It's on the road south to this was at the Commonwealth Games baton, jumping over Swakopmund, which was a fabulous thing to do.
We should have identified this one with
Sausage
you.
play.
Big Daddy. This is my favorite.
You haven't seen them all yet.
Oh.
That's me.
Oh, yeah. Spanish. Wow.
Oh, there you go.
Lovely.
I think so.
Very good.
Good afternoon, honorable tourists, The first question, if you come across the newspaper or the media papers and you hear poaching, how do you feel? When you come across our media papers and you hear that negative media statement, poaching of our animals, beautiful animals, how do you feel? I didn't hear you mention. And then the second question is, the second one, I just want to say thank you for making your next trip to Kunene. That's going to be it's going to be a nice experience. And lastly, Namibia is actually, I think we have the biggest fans of your soccer, your soccer teams. So if you can also maybe just go around the not the PSL, but EPL, and just say, guys, your fans are here.
Okay. Thank you. So, animals. I mean, I've spent a long time in Africa, and I think African wildlife is by far the best. You know, to see it in its natural habitat, not just to see it, but also to understand more about the wildlife here is actually a real privilege. And like you can get to within like 10 meters of that lion or 10 meters of the elephant or whatever. And both times, quite a lot of occasions, I've just been the only person in Etosha at that time, 10 meters from that animal. And that's a real privilege to spend time when you're not looking at it in a zoo, but you're just observing it as natural environment. And there's a big debate about trophy hunting going on, and the UK is bringing in legislation to ban trophies from hunting. And I don't agree with that, although I don't think the impact is going to be as bad as some people say. I understand what Namibia is doing, and I applaud what Namibia is doing in conservancies with hunting, and it funds anti-poaching activities. It protects the animals. It protects human-wildlife conflict. And so actually I'm a real fan of what Namibia is doing in terms of conservation of wildlife. And I think it does a brilliant job. I mean, at independence, you had 8,000 elephants. You've now got 24,000. You've doubled the number of white rhino since 2005. That's really good. In terms, I don't know what negative stuff about animals. I don't read the negative stuff about animals, I'm afraid. And at football, I'm afraid you got the wrong person, because I couldn't give a stuff about football. I know I'm English, but the problem is I've never lived anywhere more than 4 years in my life, and I've never lived anywhere to get an affinity with a particular club. Yeah. Personally, I think English Premier League football players are overpaid. and they're just a bunch of divas. That's my own personal view, anyway. That's not a British government view. But yeah, I'm sorry. I don't talk football. Who do you support, anyway? Who do you support?
Liverpool. I never walk alone.
Remember, he said he's never been to Liverpool.
I've never been to Liverpool. But although that's the president's favourite club as well.
Yes.
So you're in good company.
Yeah, I've got a question as well in as far as you obviously move in the diplomatic circles. So with your love of traveling the country and seeing what we do you find that that is a general tendency amongst diplomatic people in Namibia? Or is there rather a lot that says, no, this is not really for me?
Well, it's a good question. I think, you know, being a diplomat, part of diplomacy is to have a natural curiosity about other countries. You know, you won't be a very effective diplomat if you're not interested in other countries. And being interested in other countries can't just be about the politics. It's got to be about the people and the culture and the language and the wildlife and the flora, fauna. So you have to be interested in it, really, in order to be a diplomat. So I think it would be very strange to find a diplomat who wouldn't enjoy getting to know the country better. Some find it more difficult than others. My Brazilian colleague, or their Turkish colleague, is almost the beginning of her journey traveling around Namibia. But quite often when we meet colleagues at diplomatic receptions, we share notes about where we've just been. The French ambassador took his time to get started, but then he had some family come out and they did the most spectacular tour around Namibia, and he came back raving about it. And so actually, yeah, I mean, we have the opportunity to do that, but we also have the opportunity to do it officially. So when I go to Katima Mulilo, for example, I could do an official trip, but then on the way, maybe stop in Popa Falls or do something around Katima Mulilo. So there's opportunities provided for us to do some of the tourism stuff and to get involved in. So I speak to Save the Rhino, for example, so I'm really interested in rhino conservation in Kunene and that sort of thing. Part of it is part of the job, which makes it a real privilege that you can use your job to do some effectively tourism.
Thank you, Excellency, for your speech. Having the privilege serving in different African countries, even neighboring ones, maybe you could tell us what are the 3 distinct advantages Namibia tourism is offering? Thank you.
That's a good question because, yeah, having served in Botswana and Zimbabwe and during that time, I spent a long time driving around South Africa as well. I mean, first of all, it's a beautiful region and it's a really diverse region. So I have to say, until I came to Namibia, I thought Zimbabwe was the most beautiful country in the world. You know, I used to go to Vic Falls. I used to canoe down the Zambezi. I used to go to the Eastern Highlands. Wangi National Park. I mean, just phenomenal. Botswana, I found, and this was back in the late 80s, early 90s, Botswana was actually more challenging because I was in Gaborone, and that was great if you wanted to scoot over to Johannesburg for a weekend, but it was not great if you wanted to go and do game viewing because it was like a 12-hour drive to Maun, and then, yeah, it was complex. Namibia is much more accessible. Somebody was very clever in putting Windhoek right in the middle of the country. And so, you know, you weren't a long way from everywhere. They were also very clever in having English as a national language, I have to say. Thanks for that. But yes, everywhere's a long way. But you can drive 5 hours north, you can drive 4 hours west, you can drive 7 hours south, and you'll find lots of things of interest. So, so in a way, it offers more. You've got the coast, you've got mountains, you've got the desert. You know, Zimbabwe doesn't have any of those. Botswana's got quite a lot of desert, but not the mountains or anything like that. So I think Namibia's got so much, it offers so much. You've got the arid south, you've got the water in the north, and then you've got Etosha. So there's still so much to explore. And you know, when I first started doing lots of driving here, you know, every time you, and there aren't many bends in the road, but when you do a bend in the road, you suddenly see a whole new vista, which is just as stunning as the one you just left. And you know, that picture of the road disappearing into the mountains, and that's the main road to South Africa. So you know, it's beautiful. You know, even the driving is beautiful here. So. He's back again.
Yeah, your opinion, since you have traveled 50,000 kilometers or so, your stay, are you happy with the amount of youth that is employed at the different lodges? Are you happy, or should we do more?
Well, look, I mean, you know, obviously, hospitality can be quite a youthful business, you know, and I've seen a few of the conservancies. I've been up to the vocational training centre in Katima, which does hospitality there. It's actually a really good career, although the world over, and my daughter will tell you this as well, that you start in hospitality, it's not a very good pay anywhere in the world when you start in hospitality, even when you've got a degree. It's something that you have to be committed to. It's a service to others. And so, but I think it's actually a really attractive career option. There are many facets to careers in the hospitality sector, whether it's front office staff, whether it's cleaning staff, whether it's the food side, or the guide side, the tourism guide. There's so much opportunity, and I think it's a great career. I would encourage youth to look at it as a career option, mainly because in a place like Namibia, you're never going to run out of tourists. So you've got guaranteed market there. So if you're going to look at a career option as a youth, I think there's hospitality offers some really good options for you.
If I look at your face, you look like you're smiling. The solar, the renewable energy, and the hydrogen, and all these new development coming to Namibia, and then your favorite part, plant more trees. Are you investing? And are you investing? Are investors prepared to invest in Namibia as you talk to your business guys, going all the way?
No, I mean, a big part of my job here is to attract UK investment for Namibia. You got some fabulous opportunities in the oil sector, in the green hydrogen sector, which you know, the plans that Namibia has are fantastic plans. They're very credible plans, and in 10 years, it's going to take a while for this to work through. But in 10 years' time, Namibia could be absolutely transformed by the opportunities that currently exist. Not just in oil, green hydrogen, but rare earth minerals like lithium. You've got fabulous mineral resources here. And that's something that, you know, I'm very keen to get UK investment into, because, you know, Namibia is not well known in those areas yet. And so I'm keen to attract investment. And when people come to Namibia and they find that actually it's a much nicer place than they might have thought, that it's easier to do business, that there's less crime, there's less corruption than South Africa, yeah, what's not to like? And they can have a nice weekend at the end of it. In fact, I got a visitor who's come out today. He arrived today, and he's come out looking at investment opportunities in the healthcare sector. So it's working.
So we can field a few more questions, and then maybe leave the rest of our time together to do more networking. Is that pleasing to the... Okay, good.
Maybe I would like to ask, what are the plans for cooperation from the UK to Namibia in various sectors like tourism or education or other sectors? Is any plan ahead or something already happened that maybe we want to know, we need to know?
I mean, it's very different because, you know, tourism sector in the UK is very different to the tourism sector in Namibia. And so, you know, we don't have any expert wildlife guides in the UK, apart from small mammal guides or something. And so, but I mean, you know, there are opportunities to share. I heard someone talking earlier about the sort of brain drain where people are being taken out of Namibia to Germany to pursue hospitality careers or whatever, which I think is a real shame. But I'm sure there are opportunities for cooperation in terms of hospitality training, for example. I'm not saying ours is the best or anything, but I mean it's a question of upskilling people and going to the vocational training centre in Katima Mulilo. I'm sure there must be opportunities to twin with vocational training centres in the UK and in Europe, so that they can get the best of the courses that they can deliver in Namibia. And maybe some exchanges or something like that can go on. So, yeah. And thank you for your hospitality in Katima Mulilo when I was up there. Best pizzas in Namibia, I tell you. Lovely to see you, Simone.
You paid him. You paid him to
No,
say
he
that?
didn't. No, that was totally free. Totally free.
Any more questions?
So my question is, you mentioned that many people in the UK don't know that Namibia exists. So I wanted to ask, is that on us Namibians not selling our country as a tourism product, or is it on the UK educational system that is not informing the British that Namibia exists? Because here in Africa, I'm Zimbabwean, in secondary we had African history, and then we also had European history. So we learned a lot about you guys. So I want to know. I want to know. Like, do you guys have a curriculum in any of your education system where you teach people about us? And me and my colleagues, we are hospitality students at NAST, third years. We just had a program where we were networking with students from ECU America. We were teaching them about Namibia, Africa as a whole. We found out that actually they think we live in shacks. We have lions as pets. So we had to do a whole education system to just change their perspective on us. So that's my question. Do you have?
Mascati. So it's an interesting question, actually. I mean, I think there are two facets. One is that I don't think in the first 30 years of existence that Namibia did as much to promote itself as it could have done. I think it's only in the past 5 years or so where it's realized the great opportunities that exist and the great potential in terms of green hydrogen and that sort of thing, which has put itself, made it sort of stand up and out of South Africa's shadow. Certainly businessmen from the UK, when they think about doing business in Southern Africa, they've traditionally just gone to Joburg because they know everybody goes to Joburg, everybody knows how things work, and then they use it as a satellite to come to Namibia. And I think that's starting to change as well. The other point about Namibia, which I make regularly to the Namibian authorities, to the Namibian government, I would like to get more of our UK ministers out to Namibia. And the problem is that Namibia is just basically too well behaved. So Namibia doesn't hit the press. You don't have conflict. You don't have famine. You don't have civil war. You don't have things that hit the front pages. So the British public are less aware of Namibia because nothing actually goes wrong here, you know. Obviously, Zimbabwe was very well known in the 80s and even more recently about challenges that the country faces, hyperinflation and all the rest of it. Namibia doesn't have things that bring it to the consciousness of the British public in the same way. And most African countries, there's a lot of African countries, that people will be aware of through the media reports. Sudan, for example, at the moment, you know, everybody knows about Sudan now. They know where it is, not for a good reason, but because there's a problem. Namibia doesn't have that, which is also a good thing. But I think now is the time when people are becoming more aware of Namibia. They see the opportunities here. I'm trying to attract more trade and investment here. So I think, you know, now is an exciting time to be in Namibia, and I think for the tourism, hospitality industry here, I think it's a good time. But, you know, a point about curriculum taken. I mean, it does appear on maps in the UK, I have to say. But you know, it's not well known. It's not been a big tourism destination. But you know, that's changing. You can see that from 2011, we used to have like 21,000 or so tourists. That's increased up to about 30,000 a year, and then there's opportunity for that to expand even further as people get to know more about it. And a lot of it is word of mouth. You know, people go back from here and they say, "You've got to go to Namibia."
Yeah.
So.
That's awesome. Maybe we can take one more question. No more?
Okay, then I'll do one.
All right.
Good afternoon, I'm Happy. I manage a non-profit in Namibia. I was wondering your feeling about services. Do you think Namibia possesses good service ethics, business ethics? Are we passionate about our jobs? Do you think that the education in service and business ethics is good enough here? And do we sell our businesses passionately, in your experience?
That's an interesting question. I mean, yes, I think the people that I've come across in the hospitality industry here are passionate about what they do, especially when you're talking about conservation. People are so passionate about conservation. And it's great that the conservancies are now taking individual responsibility for tourism within their region, which is great. So I think people are passionate about their local offering. And I think that's great. Whether they sell it enough, I mean, it's a busy market. You know, if you Google accommodation in Swakop, you know, there's a huge amount to choose from of all levels and everything else. Not quite sure how you would choose that sort of thing. So you just try different places. So it's a bit difficult to say that they don't sell themselves as much. I mean, I think I think generally they do, but it's. I would still like to. I'm always keen to find out more. I mean, like the last expo here last year, I took away a huge stack of information. I'll always collect guidebooks and pamphlets. You know, every time I go to Spa, I'll pick up a few more pamphlets about where to go, and that's great. Because also, I think what's slightly missing, I think, is the local tourism promotion. Namibia is doing better in promoting itself overseas, but I live in Windhoek, so I'm always really keen to find out where to go next weekend. I'd like to see more of that. Special offers, or, I mean, yeah, obviously you see NWR, you see Gondwana, you see individual places, but I'd like to see a lot more, you know, a few pull-outs in the papers about places to go. Happens occasionally, and it's really good. I mean, because local tourism, I think, is important. You shouldn't be focusing just on international tourism. One of the benefits of COVID was that it created a Namibian market for Namibian tourism. And I think there's a real thirst in Namibia to actually attract more Namibians to get to know their own beautiful country more, rather than trying to be exclusive and attracting people who pay big bucks from Europe. Because you know, in that sense, I'm a Namibian resident, and I want those opportunities, and I want Namibians to enjoy the country as much as I've enjoyed the country, because it's so special. So don't just look at the international market. Actually, have some of those Namibian prices. Encourage Namibian tourism, because even my Namibian colleagues who have been to Etosha for the first time or been to Sossusvlei for the first time, they come back as excited as Brits. And they come back saying, "Oh, I didn't realize it was that beautiful, and I've lived here all my life." You know, you need more of that.
Well, on that note, some very good takeaways again. I would like to thank every participant. Are you going to do the closing? No, I've been instructed. Oh my word.
Rewind.
Well then, can I do one thing with everyone?
You can carry on.
Hello, Namibia. Thinking about Zambezi. Finger down for Omaheke. Ozala.
So I have some official titles called the Chief Executive Officer of NMH, and I was at Tourism Expo last year with official opening, and His Excellency came and sat next to me, and we had a very frank discussion, and I totally appreciated him at that moment. And his challenge was to me, you understand social media, but where is my website with all the events? Your Excellency, we just launched this about 2 days ago. It lists all the events that we have all over the country. It's free of charge. Please share that with us daily. It's taken me a bit longer than it should have. Unfortunately, I have other things to do as well. But I knew I couldn't invite His Excellency back here and look at him in the eyes, knowing that I did not meet his challenge he put to us. And it was really about the localness. And I smiled when he made his comments just now, because, again, he did not pay me to make these comments. But it's true. We're not very good at sharing. And yes, there's a lot on social media. Don't hear me wrong. It's wow that's happening there. We're in those spaces all day long. But there's something about just traditional websites as well that we mustn't underestimate. So just wanted to say I did meet up your challenge. So that's the first comment I'd like to make. Secondly, thank you so much for making time here today, for being here. You know, we always have the saying, we're all very busy. Trust me, ambassadors are very busy, or high commissioners. So thank you for making time. It's a real honor for me to have you here today. For all the presenters here today, thank you so much for sharing your passion and making sure that we're all getting the message across, that we're all committed to this wonderful industry called tourism. Nangula, thank you for leading us here today and just sharing this interactiveness, and all of us here asking these wonderful questions. We're a very diverse group here, and I'm not referring to countries, I'm referring to age. And that's why, because I think age brings questions that some of us wouldn't think of. And we sometimes underestimate the diversity of age. So let's not forget age is an important part, the diversity thereof. We have an expo that's just starting in about 3 minutes' time, so please enjoy the expo. Tomorrow we have a whole lot of events that's happening in terms of the networking sessions. We're very excited about tomorrow. So we got feedback or discussions or engagements from the tourist establishments. I'm proud to have Gijs here from Gondwana and sharing his experiences. Very proud to ask Johan Miller to be here tomorrow to talk about sport and tourism and what Cricket Namibia is doing, and the 2026 and 2027 World Cups that we are hosting in this country. The biggest sporting event in the history of this country is happening here. And if I read the front page newspapers, for many years to come. So let's not underestimate the power of cricket. It's a wonderful way how cricket does things. It's totally different than any other international sport code. And the main difference between cricket and any other sport is it allows a local engagement to be significantly more. I won't mention other codes because I love the other sports, and I do love soccer as well. But they tend to take over and then they just do everything. Cricket doesn't quite do it that way. Maybe they get enough money from our friends in India to be able to allow us to own our own space. But cricket, when it comes to this part of the world, will be massive. And so how do we prepare ourselves now ready for that? So Johan will share a bit about that. We're also going to talk a bit about youth conservation. I think it's an important subject matter. We've spoken a lot about youth today. Funding does stay a concern, and we had the discussions about how to get things funded. And then we had very strong views about this concept of going beyond borders. And let's just start touching base. It's sort of the end of this working session, but the beginning of the next 4 years. You'll see technically they will be talking about 3 trans-frontier areas and not 4, where I am. And again, my statement made earlier, some geography decided that Botswana owned the Kalahari, and I'm not in that space. So it's interesting how we geographically still understand things. And we got to remember that the elephant or the lion or the giraffe or the oryx does not know that border. And therefore our tourists don't know it either. But thank you so much for today, and thank you for your passion and questions. It was really enjoyable for me. I was very, very honored to be part of this process. So enjoy the expo today. Thank you.